Is it on? Is it working? I'm gonna assume it's working. Hey there. Welcome to Baldur's Gate 3. It's finally here. Early access is it's over for us PC lovers and PC players. Unfortunately, our console brothers and sisters have to wait a month, but it's okay. Unfortunately, there's no crossplay between us and the console, which kind of annoys me, but at the same time, I get it. It's a little obnoxious, but there's so many different things going on here. We're trying to create a new character that I thought I'd throw together here, kind of my off-the-cuff guide, if you will, on how, not really how to create a character, but just explaining the best that I can of these things. As someone who plays D&D at least 2 to 3 times a month, I also, as nerdy as it sounds, I'm a dungeon master for 2 games every month. So it's a lot of fun. So needless to say, I have a lot of in-game tabletop knowledge of the game of Dungeons and Dragons, which this game to me is the pinnacle of a virtual representation of playing the game. I played a little bit earlier with some friends, and we're the type of people that we're playing our characters in the game, and we're following the mechanics of the game, which I'll have some upcoming videos as well of the different classes, kind of like a sister video to this, if you will. How the main combat works, and just your action bar, and just a lot of things of that nature, and also a video of just really the tutorial area in a way to kind of help you guys get through that. But also there's a lot of nice hidden links here. There's a sword that you can get in the game if you know where it is, that at early levels is obnoxiously crazy. So let me get into it here. You start a new game. There's 3 difficulties first that kind of come. Explorer, which is more of your story-based difficulty. So the game will, you'll be able to experience the story, the side quests of all these characters, and your own story as well. But combat may not be as strict and angry at you as it may be in Balanced. Whereas Balanced is more of, you get that nice mixture of, this is some challenge in combat, but also you still get the story. Whereas Tactician, that is your hardcore, in my opinion, battle system for this, to where you are playing this more of, you still get the story. You'll get the story in all of these, but from Tactician, think of this as the hardest difficulty, to where your placement of your character will matter. Because the game will now start taking into effect of, if you push your wizard forward, which we'll talk about these characters later, if you push them forward, a wizard doesn't have a lot of health. And the game at this point will know this, of, hey, you pushed your wizard up to the front lines, we're gonna kill him. And they will kill you. There's the one difference between this game and most DMs or Dungeon Masters when you play a tabletop game. We try not to kill our players unless they do something dumb. Then it's on them. But on Tactician, I feel the game will very much try to just destroy you. So let's get started in here so I can get to the new character creation portion. I'm going to skip the cutscene for right now, just because that's not really what I'm here for. I'm here more for trying to walk through of these different options we have here. So you'll see on the left hand side of your screen, there is the origin of your character. So what they've added into this is that you can either create a custom character, and by custom character I mean full-on custom. How you look, from your race to a subrace, which I'll cover later, your class, which is how you're going to play this game. If you wanted to be more of a frontline fighter, you might pick a barbarian. If you want to be in the back or in the sidelines, if you will, casting spells from a distance, some type of spellcaster, or there's also there's different classes for someone who wants to be a support player. So there's a lot of different options here in the game. And then what your background is and your ability scores. But here, primarily with your origin, you can make a custom character, like I said, which you can customize pretty much everything, or you can pick one of the pre-selected characters. So if I were to pick Gale here, for example, Gale is apparently a level 1 wizard, and so he has his own introduction mission or movie of explaining who he is and his whole story and all that fun stuff. And every character, I should say, has that. And then they're kind of, in my opinion, looking through these, like they have rolled the stats or set the stats to kind of give you a good feel, so that if you're playing this cleric, for example, you will have a fun time doing so. The only one of these origin characters that does not have a background of that nature is this Dark Urge. The Dark Urge is, without giving too much away from the actual main story itself, has their own, I should say, their own background, their own origin for all of this. And judging off of this, it looks like they make you a sorcerer off the get-go. What's nice, I think, is that when I look here, can I change this? No. So if you pick one of the pre-existing characters, you can't change the race. But if you pick the Dark Urge, you can go through and take a different race, pick a different class. The Dark Urge is more of, I'd say, more of maybe a darker character. I really don't know too much about it, if I'm honest. I really want to learn more about it because, yeah, it seems kind of cool. So there's your origins, for lack of a better term, is you can either make your own or you can pick a character. I'm going to go through here next and kind of pick a custom character because that seems fun. I can go through, and if you hit randomize, it just randomly picks you a class, race, stats. It does all the work for you. And what's nice with this is that it keeps a history of all the characters you've randomly generated. So I think if I keep generating this, I think there was a dragonborn right here somewhere. There they are. It keeps a long list of that, which is nice. I'll get the backgrounds later when I get that far. But going over the races here, race is something that you cannot change once you pick it. So when you pick a race, just keep in mind that this is what you're stuck with. This is you, for lack of a better term. And really, how race plays into this game is, if you're an elf, for example, it just kind of changes your dialogue choices and how NPCs feel about you, and some of the stat bonuses you might get, and your armor proficiencies, weapons, and skill proficiencies. That I'll go over what all that means in a moment, in addition to proficiencies. But biggest thing to keep in mind with this as well is that how the NPCs will treat you. So if you are an elf and you come across insert race here who hates elf, insert NPCs right here who hates elves, they will most likely not want anything to do with you. I've had experiences where there was, for lack of a better term, a racist shopkeep who would not do business with me because I was an elf. He would let all my other party members trade with him, but because I was an elf, he wanted nothing to do with me. So it's just kind of something to kind of keep in mind, that the race you pick, people will view you a certain way based on things. But what also comes with this as well too is that, like I said, you get different proficiencies in weapons, armor, and skills. The skills I'll go over later in this video, but I'll start with weapons. So one thing to keep in mind as you're going through this, and these are things that you can kind of look in yourself as well, but if you hold the T key over things, you actually can get a little bit more information about certain abilities, or it pins it. And then just click somewhere in the screen and it will take it away. But you can also hover over it, sorry. So simple weapons. Simple weapons are something like a dagger, for example, or not a dagger, but just very what they call simple weapons in the game here. Martial weapons are more of your short swords, long swords, scimitars, a hammer. I know long swords and short swords are in here with them themselves. Long bows, a bow that can go longer distances, or your short bows, for example. So if I were an elf, I would automatically have proficiency in those items, meaning I can use them. Proficiency kind of ties into both some skill attributes, but also what you have access to use. From an armor standpoint, armors come in basically 3 sets. There's light armor, medium armor, and heavy armor. So if I were to pick this elf, I would be able to have access to all 3 armor types, meaning that I'd be able to have the heavier armors. And where armor kind of plays into this is each armor item has a armor class, or AC, as I'll most likely refer to in future videos, is basically the number that when someone's attacking you, they have to meet or break it in order to do damage to you. So let's say that your AC is a 13, and a goblin runs up on you and he tries to stab you with his short sword. Well, he has to beat your AC, your armor class of 13, in order to, equal or break it in order to do damage to you. So let's say he rolls an attack and he rolls a 10. Well, that's not going to hit you, so thankfully you're in luck. But if he rolls a 17, for example, now he can roll damage to attack you, and now you'll take tinks against your health. The skills I'll go over some more, but as you can kind of see, different races have different skill proficiencies. So an elf, for example, has not proficiency, sorry. He does proficiency, sorry. Proficiency in athletics, history, perception, intimidation, and persuasion. A tiefling has athletics, history, and intimidation. They can also use simple weapons and martial weapons, light armor, medium armor, and shields. And shields come in a basic shield or a tower shield. Basically, just the tower shield gives you more armor. Your drow, which is a specific type of elf, it's basically kind of think he's like a dark elf, for lack of a better term. Very similar to your elves, but instead of long swords, they have proficiency in rapiers and hand crossbows. But they're also proficient in athletics, history, perception, intimidation, and persuasion. A human can use pretty much every weapon, for lack of a better term, all the kinds of armor, and they're proficient in athletics, history, survival, intimidation, and persuasion. Also with each race too, you'll notice that based on your main race, you also get access to specific skills. So, because I'm a fighter, that's why it's giving me second wind. But because I'm an elf, you'll see when I look at the sub-races here in a moment that I get access to a cantrip spell. As a tiefling, I also get a cantrip. Drow don't get any extra spells. Humans as well. Githyanki, or Gith, as I'll refer to them, just because it's easier. They have proficiency in all the items you see here, in addition to athletics, history, intimidation, and persuasion. A dwarf has access to the items you see here, and I'll just select each race so you can kind of see what they have. And again, I'll go over more of what athletics are and examples of those later. So half elf, they share their elven brothers, sisters, whatever you want to call it, abilities where they can have a cantrip based on their sub race. Dragonborn, they're very specific. When I get into Subrace of, you have what's called a breath weapon, and based on the type of dragon you are, you have a different damage type based on that. So for example, if you are a, looks like I'm a black dragonborn in this example, you have an acid breath weapon. So you do acid damage whenever you are casting your breath weapon. Then you have half-orcs. Half-orcs are just that. They're kind of half orc, half something else. It's very interesting. Now I'll go over race features. Sorry. So because I'm an elf, I have these race features of elven weapon training, which is why I have access to proficiency in the items shown here. I have dark vision, meaning I can see in the dark up to 12 meters. And they have a Fey ancestry, meaning that I have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and I can't be put to sleep by magic. So that's one of the bonuses of an elf, is that they have advantage against potentially being charmed, and by charmed, I'll go over those a little later, but charmed, for lack of a better term, is when an enemy casts a charm spell on your character, there's a potential that if you fail the DC difficulty check on it, that you are then charmed by this enemy, so you don't want to attack them, for lack of a better term. There's also magic that can put you to sleep. So by being an elf, you automatically can never be put to sleep due to that kind of magic. Tiefling is one of the other races that has dark vision. And also they have resistance to fire damage. So you'll see items throughout the game, and also enemies and things that have resistance or immunity to your specific damage type. In this instance, resistance means you take half damage, and immunity means you take no damage. So as a tiefling, if somebody hits you with a fireball spell, and it's supposed to do 10 damage because they hit you, and you're supposed to take that 10 damage from whatever happened. Because you have hellish resistance, you actually in turn take 5 damage instead of the full 10. And that can be very helpful for fire-based attacks. Let's see here, is it 12? Okay. So as a drow, you also have proficiency in the weapon types you see here. But in addition, you have access to have dark vision for 24 meters instead of 12. So that's pretty far for you to see, in the dark. And then you also have the ancestry feature. As a human, you have proficiency in spears, pikes, halberds, and glaives, and also you get proficiency in light armor and shields. But in addition, because you are a human, you can select an additional skill to be proficient in, and your carrying capacity is increased just because you're a human. Carrying capacity ties into how much gear your person can carry at a time, which ties into your strength. So a higher strength means you can carry more. So if you want to be the pack mule, for lack of a better term, a human might be up your alley. Githraki, or Gith, they have proficiency in a specific ability or skill that they choose. And then they also get a cantrip from a selected list. In addition, they have that's where they get their proficiency in light armor, medium armor, short swords, long swords, and great swords. A dwarf, off the get-go, moves less than everyone else. I believe everyone else here, everyone from elf to Gith has 9 meters of movement speed, and a dwarf has slightly under that. But to make up for that, they have proficiencies in battle axes and hand axes and hammers. They can see in dark vision for 12 meters, and they also have advantage against poison and resistance to poison damages. So if someone hits you with a poison spell or you activate a poison trap, you have advantage on the saving throw against that. But also, if you take damage, again, you're resistant, so that means you take half the damage. A half-elf, does it let you? Okay, you can only pick certain races. I'll get back to that. But you get the dark vision benefit of being an elf, and you also get the advantage on your charming and magic not sleeping you portion as being an elf. But you gain some of the benefits of being a human, which is why they can use spears and pikes. Halflings get this ability called Lucky, to where if you roll 1 for an attack, ability, check, or saving throw, you can re-roll that dice and use the new roll. So let's say you rolled a 1 on an attack roll against somebody. Well, because you have this ability, you can use that to re-roll it and pretend the 1 never happened. You also have advantage against being frightened. So there's also spells that can make you frightened, which means you want to run away from whatever frightened you. So if you have advantage on that, you have a better chance of kind of holding your ground. A gnome has advantage on intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. I'll go over saving throws later once I start getting into the attributes. But having that advantage on these saving throws is nice. So advantage means you roll your saving throw or dice twice and take the higher result. Whereas disadvantage, which you'll see in other portions of the game, means you roll 2 dice and take the lower of the 2. So there are some pluses and minuses of having that advantage on your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma saving throws, because there's a lot of spells that are an intelligence thing or a wisdom saving throw. And yeah, having the ability to have advantage on that could make or break you in certain aspects. A gnome also moves as fast as a dwarf, and also, a halfling moves as fast as a dwarf. So basically your shorter races, if you will, have that slightly less movement speed. Dragonborns don't get anything special other than the breath weapon, which I've already covered. Half-orcs have dark vision for 12 meters. They have this ability called Relentless, which basically, if you get down to 0 HP, you can use this ability to regain 1 HP and come back up from being down. So that can make or break a fight, honestly. If your half-orc gets down, comes back to life, hits that killing blow on the boss, and you're good to go. They also have access to this ability feature called Savage Attack, where if you land a critical hit, which is a natural 20 on your attack dice, the dice is tripled instead of doubled. So when you get a critical hit on something, you roll a natural 20, you get to double your damage dice against an attacker, against the opponent, sorry. So if your weapon does 1 8-sided dice worth of damage, now it's going to do 2 8-sided dice worth of damage, plus your any other modifiers, which I'll cover later. That's your races. Not all races have a sub-race. Humans don't have a sub-race, and Gith and half-orcs do not have one. So I'm going to go into, I'll be having to bounce back and forth a little bit here to kind of talk about these sub-races, so bear with me. As an elf, you can pick a sub-race of a high elf. And a high elf, basically, you get access to specific cantrips. Why can't I change it? That's not, oh, I have to pick the, I'm smart. And then the other sub-race is a wood elf, meaning that you just get more movement speed. So if you want to move farther, pick a wood elf. Quite honestly, in my opinion, a high elf is where it's at. If you're going to pick an elf or a half elf, because not only do you get access to some spells, but some of these cantrips can be very useful. Um, let's see here. Well, I'll just stick with Firebolt for right now because that's the first one that's picked. So as this means that you automatically get the cantrip, which I'll cover cantrips and spells later in this video as well. But you would do a D10 or a 10-sided dice worth of damage against a enemy. It can be hurled or thrown up to 18 meters, so it has some pretty long damage. But any modifiers to this are based off of your intelligence. I believe not all of them. Some of them go off of your. Actually, no, they all go off your intelligence. I apologize. So that's Firebolts. So it's going to do anywhere between 1 and 10 damage per time you throw. Acid Splash would do 1 to 6 worth of damage, but there's a dexterity saving throw attached to that. So if you cast Acid Splash on something, that means that the enemy has the ability to now do a dexterity saving throw to try and break your spell difficulty class or difficulty check or DC of 13 in this case, due to how my stats are set up. So because of that save, I wouldn't overly recommend Acid Splash because of how little damage it does. There's no spell save for Bone Chill, which Bone Chill is interesting because when you hit somebody with it, they don't have the ability to heal until next turn, and they have disadvantage on attack rolls. So if you have a boss that's just kind of a giant prick, you could use that to kind of debuff them a little bit. Acid Spray is probably one of the more higher damaging cantrips that you can get access to. It does a D12 worth of damage, so 1 to 12 damage, but there's a Constitution saving throw with it, so there's a chance that they could take half damage or more damage. And that's kind of the feel here one is if you see anything that says evocations or attack spell, True Strike sounds cool to get advantage on your next attack roll for the next 2 turns. It requires concentration, which I'll talk about later, which I feel True Strike is kind of a waste. But you get access to any one of these kind of spells to do as you wish. As a Tiefling, if you pick the Asmodeus subclass, you get Produce Flame, which is a D8 of fire damage to anything that's around you. But the problem with this is that you can only do this once per long rest. So with rests, there are long rests and short rests, where a long rest just takes longer and you get all your spell slots back. A short rest is you can kind of heal and do things of that nature. Basically, the difference between a lot of these subraces is what cantrip you have access to. So this one you have access to the Mage Hand cantrip, and this last one you get access to Thaumaturgy, which basically just gives you advantage on intimidation and performance checks. So from a Tiefling perspective, if you're going to take any kind of subrace, Thaumaturgy or the Asmodeus would probably be a good subrace to choose. From the Drow, you don't get much of any benefit from this. It's just really how you're read from people involved at this point. A dwarf, you get different bonuses based on your subrace here. So a gold dwarf gets a bonus to their hit point maximum, and it increases by one every time you level up. A shield dwarf, you get proficiency in light and medium armor. So you could potentially be a a shield dwarf wizard who gets armor proficiency in light and medium armor because of the race you picked. Duergar, you get, it's very much like the Drow. It's very similar lore, if you will, but they can see farther in dark vision. So if you're in a cave and you can't see anything because there's no light, this will be something you kind of like. But in addition to that, you also get an advantage on saving throws against illusions and being charmed or paralyzed. So it's very similar to some of the benefits that a elf would have. Half elf, you get access to all of the different pieces of what the elf had. So if you pick high elf, half elf, you get access to all those cantrips. If you pick wood elf, you get the bonus to your movement speed. And if you pick drow, you get dancing lights as a cantrip, which basically just puts light around you to be able to see. Halflings, if you're a Lightfoot, you get advantage on stealth checks. So if you're playing more of a rogue character, that might be helpful. Or if you pick Strong Heart, you get advantage against being poisoned, and you get the same effect as a dwarf would have, for lack of a better term, in regards to being poisoned. A gnome, if you pick a rock gnome, you get advantage. You get farther dark vision, and you can add twice your proficiency bonus to history checks. So if you have a +2 proficiency, it now becomes a +4 to your history. So if you want to be really good at history, a rock gnome might be up your alley. Forest gnome, you get access to the speak with animals spell. Basically, you can understand languages of animals and have a conversation with them in the game, and that might be helpful or not helpful. And then you also can see in the dark up to 12 meters. Deep Gnome is the equivalent of a Drow or Duergar class or subrace where you can just see farther in the dark, but you also have advantage on stealth checks. So really, like, if you want to be more of a rogue kind of character, anything that gives you advantage on stealth checks could be helpful. For the Dragonborn, like I had mentioned, you have access to a breath weapon, and based on what kind you have, it differences of what you have, both as your breath weapon damage type, but also what you are resistant to. So by being a black dragon, I not only get a acid damage effect from my breath weapon, but I also have resistance against acid, meaning that any acid damage I take is automatically halved. A blue dragon has that same effect, but it's more lightning based. So your breath weapon is a lightning based attack, but you are resistant to lightning. A brass dragon is a fire based breath weapon, but resistant to fire. Your bronze dragon is lightning, the lightning effect that I just spoke of. Copper is acid. Gold is fire. Green dragon is for poison effects, so you have a poison-based breath weapon, but your resistance against poison. Red dragon is fire. Silver is cold, so any cold damage would be halved. And then a white dragon is also halved for cold. So there's, if you think about it, there's 2, 4, 6, 8. There's 10 sub races of a dragonborn, and there should be at least 2 that are equivalent in regards to their resistances. They're not really put in order, but pretty much, I should say that. I take that back. Green dragons are blue, so I take that back. It's not 2 to 2. But those are races, for lack of a better explanation on things, and hopefully that's helpful. All the way through this video, I've been talking about proficiency bonuses and proficiency skills and rah. What proficiency is as you progress through the game, whenever you need to make a skill check or an attack and whatnot, there is a 20-sided dice you roll, and that ties to um, your designated skill or whatever you're trying to do, and that goes against either a DC if it's a skill check or someone's AC if you're attacking. So if you roll a 20-sided dice and got a 10 for trying to be stealthy, and you have a stealth skill of +5, um, you would have a 15 that you rolled for your stealth check. And let's say the difficulty check or DC was a 12. That means you're stealthy enough and you're able to get through it. Classes. There's a lot of different classes to choose from. Class can be changed later throughout the game. As you're leveling up your character, you will get access to the ability to multi-class. Multi-class, I feel I should probably put as something separate, but I'll try my best to kind of cover that in here. As you're playing the game, each class, you have your main class that you start as, but in addition to that, there are classes that you can multi-class or also level up as. So as you level up, let's say you level to, you're now level 4. That's not your character level per se. It's a combination of things, really. If you're a level 4 character, that means you are a level 4 character. But in addition, you could be... Oh, volume? Oh, thanks, Alex. That's obnoxious. Here, let me do this. Let me drop this bad boy down. Yeah, because like this headset's a little wonky at times, so I appreciate that, Alex. Into like multi-classing, sorry. So you have your character level 4, but you could be a level 2 barbarian in addition to a level 2 fighter if you meet the requirements to be said multi-classed class. There are a bunch of restrictions in regards to if you can be a certain class. So to do paladin, for example, most of the combinations, if you will, are like a 13 in a certain attribute. Paladin, I believe you have to have a 13 in charisma to even get into being a multi-class. That's listed all throughout the game as you play. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. And I'll have another video on that later, I'm sure. Or I'll probably mention it, I'm not gonna lie, of if you wanted to be a barbarian paladin, it might be a good idea to also buff up your charisma. But multi-classing can also get you into trouble to where you can be mad, which is multi-attribute distribution, for lack of a better term, to where if you're like a barbarian, but you also want to tie into being a wizard, you just might not be good at one thing versus the other. So a barbarian is all about attacking, so high strength and high constitution, and I'll get through those abilities here in a little bit. But then you have a wizard who needs a high intelligence score in order to properly cast their spells. Well, if you have you're kind of going down, if you're going down an expressway, it's like you split your car and now you're trying to figure out what you want to do. So like you could do it, but for lack of a better term, not to be mean, you're kind of wasting your level up by going to be a barbarian wizard because you have so many different attributes you'd have to compete with in order to be effective. But back to classes, a barbarian is your let me dial back, sorry. There's 3 different main classes, sub categorizations, if you will. There's what I'll always refer to as a martial class, which is your sword users and people who use bows. Basically just your basic weapon users. Then you have your spellcasters, which are more... So a martial class example would be a barbarian, fighter, cleric in a way, paladin primarily as well, and then your monks. But then you also have your dedicated spellcasters, so a sorcerer, wizard, and I'd throw in druid as part of this as well. And then you have a support class kind of grouping, which is more of your bards and clerics. So a cleric is really your healer, more than, for lack of a better term. A bard is the one sitting there in the back giving you support spells of, like giving you inspiration or him giving you advantage on attacks. So like if you want to be that kind of character of you support everybody, a bard might be for you. Then you have also a bunch of other classes too that kind of tip their toes in both pools of, like a warlock for example. They're kind of martial, but they're also kind of spellcasty as well. A barbarian would be, you want to be in the front lines, you're going to be taking the hits, you're tanking. Or for description of tanking, basically you're the one that takes the damage, but you also deal the damage. Best examples of those would be a barbarian and a paladin to me. So if that's what you want to do, you want to be in that front line, you want to be smashing heads, barbarian and paladin's probably the classes for you. If you want to take more of a support role, I've mentioned it before, bards. Bards they have a little bit of martial abilities, but they're really meant for support and just miscellaneous things of that nature. A cleric in certain subclasses, which I'll try my best to get into some of the subclasses I can here. It's character creation, so unfortunately some subclasses aren't available yet until you hit level 3. But I can still kind of talk about them as I go through. So like your cleric, they're more of like, you want them, they'll be up front, they'll be attacking, but they'll also be helping heal your people. Druids are your, never thought I'd see a druid dragonborn, but here we are. Druids are more of your, they're in touch with nature and they're more elemental spellcasters. So they're communing with nature, they can change into creatures such as like a bear, for example. They're really more of that kind of thought process. A fighter is your basic, just fighter. If you want to play a character like Geralt from the Witcher series, a fighter might be up your alley because of just what you can do with them. They have access to a bunch of different weapons and armor, and they're kind of a frontline fighter, not as strong as a barbarian would be, but they can still hold their own. Monks are more hand-to-hand combat. If you want to play someone kind of like Goku or Vegeta, Dragon Ball Z kind of thing, or Bruce Lee, Monk might be up your alley. I'm trying not to typecast it, but it's kind of hard not to. Monks are very much, they fight with their fists and they stun pretty much everything under the sun. Paladins, these are your knights in shining armor, but they can also be your knights in dark armor as well. What's nice with this game is that as a paladin, you don't have to just follow down the goody two-shoes path. You can be a evil paladin and still hold into things. I personally like paladins. I've always loved playing as them in D&D itself, but they're kind of like your frontline fighter and tanks as well. Very easy to get into their having high armor classes, if you will. I'm going to double back here again, sorry, because I forgot to mention kind of a little bit with the attributes here. So I'm going to double back and I'll go through all these again, sorry. As you'll see here on the right hand side, there's a bunch of different attributes. You have strength, which ties into your physical strength ability, like your ability to throw something or pick up something and chuck and do whatever. Maybe even pick up Gimli and throw him over the bridge, that kind of thing. That's really what strength is kind of thing. So anything that you would think of that you would use like physical power and muscles to do, a high strength you would need. Dexterity, that's more of just kind of nimbleness and agility. There's these rapiers, which are more of a finesse-based weapon, and there's other weapons of that nature that you would need a higher dex score in order to kind of utilize. And also a higher dex ties into more bonuses to your armor. Constitution really stands around health and stamina. Basically, a higher constitution, the higher your health could potentially get. Intelligence is just how smart, for lack of a better term, is your character. There's also with these classes, as I kind of go through this some more, where a spellcaster has a primary ability, and the higher that ability is, the better you're going to do with some things. Wisdom is just kind of your senses, so inciting someone. So for example, if someone's saying like, oh yeah, I'm like your best friend, if you have a high wisdom, you might be able to see through the facade that they're trying to throw at you. And charisma is just really like how charismatic, how well you liked by people. A higher charisma means it's going to be easier for you to either intimidate, deceive, or persuade people, but also a higher charisma, the traders will be nicer to you. As I'm going through these classes, you'll see that there's a star over these. Like if I switch to a bard, you'll see the star goes over charisma, but if I go back to barbarian, it's over strength. And what the game is trying to do for you is show you what the primary attribute for that specific class is. So for this example, as a barbarian, the game's trying to tell us that, hey, you're playing a barbarian, it might be beneficial for you to have a higher strength in order to do what you need to do. So in this instance, as a barbarian with a higher strength, this mostly means that I can wield bigger weapons, I can do more damage, and I can smash more stuff because I like to smash stuff. A barbarian also doesn't get access to any kind of spells, for lack of a better term. Your bards get more of your support spells, like I had mentioned, but for them, their primary ability would be charisma. Your charisma is going to be what you use mostly for your spell casting abilities. So the higher your charisma, the higher chance your spells will hit and last longer. As I'm going through this, I should say that I'd primarily say strength and constitution for a barbarian, because most barbarians aren't going to wear armor. You're going to be running around with almost nothing. So the higher strength you have means the more damage you'll output, and the higher constitution means the more damage you can take. As a bard, like I mentioned, high charisma is good. You'll probably want to use more dexterity-based weapons, so dexterity would probably be a secondary stat that I would recommend. Clerics, their primary spellcasting ability is wisdom, and as a cleric, you can easily get into being mad, like I had mentioned, so more than 2 skills. Like, as a cleric, I would say wisdom and probably your strength would be your 2 main focuses. Dexterity and constitution are up there as well, because a higher dex means you could have more armor bonuses, and then constitution, you can take more damage. Think of a cleric as they're a fighter, but they also have some better support abilities, whereas like a bard is more in the support, but they can still kind of attack. A druid's primary spellcasting ability is wisdom. Wisdom would most likely be one of the first things to try and max out with them, and then I would say probably dexterity and constitution, just from my experience with it. You're really not using heavy weapons, so strength isn't overly needed. I'd say maybe staffs and quarterstaffs is like a weapon to use with them, or a sickle. Like sickles are usually something that goes well. But yeah. Fighter, really, what do you want to use? Do you want to use more heavy weapons? You'd probably go into strength. If you want to use more dexterity-based weapons, like a short sword or a rapier, then dexterity is probably the skill you'd want to have higher, or bows as well. That's the nice thing about fighters, is that they're very universal. Of they can use swords or they can use bows both efficiently. I would say probably Constitution afterwards. Monks, their primary stat would be Dexterity. I would say Dexterity and Constitution with them. Paladins, Strength and actually Charisma then Strength. The reason I say that is Charisma is your spellcasting ability primary focus. So the higher your Charisma, again, the higher chances your spells will actually stick. Strength and Constitution are up there as well, just because you're going to be wearing that heavy armor, you're going to be wielding that big great warhammer most likely, or a shield, and you want to be able to take some hits. Rangers are primarily your archers, I would say. So high dexterity, high constitution, and wisdom, sorry. So wisdom is your primary stat for spells. Rangers do get access to a good amount of spells. Personally, to me, one of their best spells would be, I'll go over spells here in a little while, but Hunter's Mark. It gives you some bonuses to attacking things. And there are some other spells that folks might find useful under the Ranger spell list. Personally, in my playthroughs of a Ranger, both in D&D and here, I've primarily kind of like Wisdom I wanted kind of high, like at a 14 or so, but I primarily pushed Dexterity and Constitution. Just because, to me, there weren't a lot of Ranger spells that I found useful for myself. Rogues are your stab from the shadows kind of folks, so high dexterity, because dexterity is used for things like stealing or sleight of hand and hiding in the shadows from things. Certain subclasses of them, and I'll go through the subclasses here in a little while once I've kind of gone through this, but some of the subclasses do get a little magic based, and from them there's a different stat you would use. Sorcerers, warlocks, and wizards. Those are your main spell casting folk. A sorcerer is more based around damage dealing spells, so they're very high, like fireballs and storms and things of that nature. With them, I would say your primary piece would be charisma, just because a higher charisma means your spells will last longer and do more fun stuff. But in addition, it's just what you want to kind of mess with. You're not really going to be doing a lot with weapons, or strength-based weapons, so dexterity and constitution will probably be a good second, just in my opinion with it. A warlock, they are a charisma-based class, so charisma would be a primary skill for them, in my opinion, for it. There's certain subclasses with them, like there's certain packs, and pieces of them that you can use your charisma modifier instead of your strength or dexterity when attacking. So what I mean by that is, if you have a short sword, it takes your dexterity bonus and proficiency bonus for knowing what numbers to add to your attack. Whereas if you pick a warlock and you go down and pick those specific items here I'll talk about once I dive into this, you'll be able to say, yeah, that's cool, I have a long sword and I have a -1 to strength, well, I'm going to use my charisma modifier instead. So there are ways that you can really just forego and not even care about strength and dexterity and focus highly on charisma and constitution. They get access to a bunch of different kind of spells and cantrips. Their staple would be Eldritch Blast. It's really hard not to get away from a warlock using Eldritch Blast just because it's such a powerful cantrip. Your wizards, these are your big spell casters. So with them, their casting ability is intelligence. So a high intelligence is always good. High constitution and dexterity, because I'm not gonna lie, as a wizard, you are very squishy. literally breeze could kill you. Um, it is what it is, especially at lower levels. If you can take your wizard and at least get up to level 4 or 5, life will start getting a little bit easier for you because you get access to such higher quality spells. There's even spells that a wizard gets that no one else can really even touch. For example, I don't know if it's in the game, but there's like Meteor, for example, is a maximum level spell that does a lot of damage in an area. That's classes more or less in a nutshell. I'm gonna start talking here best I can about spells. I know a lot of the information I've been giving here kind of crisscrosses a little bit. It's not the most organized thing in the world. I'm doing what I can here. So with spells, let's see here. I'll start with a bard. So spells come in multiple forms. There's what's called cantrips, which are a level 0 spell that you can cast as many times a day as you'd like. And then there's other spells that have a spell level associated to them. Usually spells go from level 1 to level 9, where basically the higher level means that you're probably stronger, doing more damage, it lasts longer, those kind of things. For your spellcasters, everybody gets X number of spell slots to use, and you get more spell slots as you go. So, for example, here's a level 1 bard. We can pick 2 cantrips that we can cast. All of these do a lot of different things. I'll let you kind of go through these on your own leisure when you're looking through things. There'll most likely be a video later once I can get access to more spells to kind of describe those and kind of give you a build off of those. But cantrips are, yes, you can use them a lot, but also they're not overly the most powerful thing. There are some cantrips, like Eldritch Blast, for example, that when you level up to level 5, instead of doing 1 damage dice, or having 1 blast, you get 2, that you can either target the same person or 2 different things, and in turn you do more damage. So there are some cantrips that level up with you as you go. For the bard here, like I mentioned, we have 4 level 1 spell slots. So that means that of these spells I have, I can only cast them up to 4 times a day in any combination of these. So I could cast Healing Word, which heals my friends and I, for X number of healing up to 4 times a day before I have to take a long rest. At higher levels, you get different slots. So let's say we had 2 level 2 slots. A lot of the spells you can do what's called upcasting. So I could upcast this Healing Word at level 2, and rather than doing 1d4 plus 3, it may be 2d4 plus 3. So you can take your lower level spells and upcast them, but you can't take a level 2 spell and cast it as a level 1. So it's a little double-edged sword with that, if you will. Some of the spells... Is there one here? This is a bad example for me, but there are some spells that have what's called concentration. So concentration spells are spells that require you to do just that. You need to concentrate on casting the spell. So if you take damage, you have to roll what's called a Constitution saving throw, which is based off of your Constitution bonuses, which I'll talk about later. But you would do this throw, and it's compared against the damage taken. So let's say you're concentrating on a spell, and you take 14 damage. You would take that damage, but you would also need to roll that Constitution saving throw. And in order to keep concentrating on the spell, you would need to equal or beat the amount of damage taken. So if you took 14 damage, you would roll your Constitution saving throw and then add 10 to it. And if you beat 14 or equal it, you're good. And if you don't, then you lose concentration on that spell and it ends. So let's say in this example, I rolled a a 5 for my Constitution saving throw. So I could roll a 15 total. That beats 14. I still take the damage, but I don't lose concentration on said spell. Um, a lot of different classes have subclasses as well. I should have talked about this earlier. I'm going to talk about it now, so my apologies on that of kind of jumping around. A lot of the different subclasses are either just additions to your existing class, and they just add different abilities. So for example, this cleric, by picking the life domain, I get more access to healing spells and things that I can pick. Or if I pick the light domain, I get a cantrip, but then I also get some of these other spells to kind of go with it. So really your subclass is important to tie in with your class as well. And also, if you are certain classes, you get access to a deity. There's a lot of different deities through here. You can look up this information on like a D&D wiki, for example, of what all of these mean. But pretty much what it means is that as a cleric in this example, I pray to Bahamut. Bahamut is my main deity. He's the person that gives me power for X, Y, and Z. With a fighter, in addition to subclasses, you get fighting styles. And fighting styles can just be different bonuses to things. So if you wanted to do a more archery-based person, you would probably want to pick archery as a fighting style because you get a bonus to your attacks with it. Defense, you get one added to your armor class if you're wielding just one. Just in general, sorry. Dueling, if you're wielding a one-handed weapon, you give an additional 2 damage with that. So let's say you had a shield and a hammer, you would do an extra 2 damage on top of everything, which is nice. Great weapon fighting, if you wanted to go around wielding a 2-handed weapon, what this ends up doing is if your damage roll is a 1 or a 2, you get a plus... you get to re-roll those 1s or 2s instead of having to keep them. Protection, basically if you have a shield, you can give disadvantage to anyone that's attacking you or your allies if they're within 1.5 meters. So if you're trying to play a character that you want to be right in those front lines and also protect your friends that are next to you, you might pick this so that you can kind of protect your teammates. 2-weapon fighting. So you can dual wield in this game. It's an amazing game where you can do that kind of thing. But the problem is that in order for it to really be beneficial, you almost need to take the 2-weapon fighting style, and there's additional feats that you'd want to take in addition to this that would give you bonuses to that. So every time you attack, you can use what's called a bonus action to make another attack with your offhand weapon. So let's say you're attacking with your right hand, you can offhand attack with your left, but you don't get to add your proficiency bonus to it. So if your proficiency bonus is like a +2 and your strength is a +2, you'd only be able to add the strength bonus to this. Paladins also at one point do get a fighting style, but a lot of your subclass bases are rolled around your oath. So Oath of Ancients is very much talked about with the older gods, if you will. Oath of Devotion is more of you're very honorable and virtuous, so you get a lot of holy or radiant based spells as part of your leveling up portion. And then Vengeance, you're very much against, you're very much for basically just getting justice done. And then you get a couple radiant based items along with this. Um, if for some reason you don't follow your oath, you become an Oathbreaker Paladin and get access to the fourth subclass, which you get more bonuses and things like that. Personally, to me, an Oathbreaker Paladin is probably one of the best things to roll with. Rangers, when you first start out, you can pick a favored enemy. With this, so what this basically means is that if you're tracking something or attacking a certain enemy that you favored, you get bonuses. So as having a history of battling spellcasters, I have a proficiency now in Arcana, and I get True Strike as a free cantrip. Or as a ranger, I gain bonuses to history and armor, and I can actually wear heavy armor. So I can be a ranger in heavy armor because I picked this favorite enemy. Sanctified Stalker, basically you gain a lot of religion stuff, but you can also cast Sacred Flame, which is a very, very good cantrip. Keeper of the Veil, you get proficiency in Arcana and get access to protection from good and evil, or evil and good. And then Bounty Hunter, you gain proficiency in Investigation, and creatures you hit with a specific ability have disadvantage on saving throws. So a lot of these you just get a lot of different bonuses based on what it is. It looks like every ranger gets a Find Familiar ability, meaning that you can have a Fey Spirit animal following you around and doing cool stuff. Natural Explorer, this is really pick a terrain type and you have advantage on traversing through that, or you get resistances to things. So with these Wasteland Wanderers, if I pick the cold option, you're resistant to cold damage. This one would be fire damage. This would be poison. Urban Tracker, basically traversing through cities. And you get, with Beast Tamer, you get the ability to cast that familiar. But if I pick any of these other ones, then I don't. Looks like I get True Strike automatically because I'm awesome. Sorcerer. So Sorcerer, your magic bloodline, if you will, comes from three main areas. You can either be a Draconic bloodline, meaning that you get your magic from dragons. And based on this, it's probably because I'm already a dragon. Let me pick a different race. No. It may happen later. Oh, there it is. There's the ancestor. If you're not a... Oh, maybe it didn't do it for dragon. Let me try again something. Alright, so... sorry, I'll stick with this. Basically, your powers come from the dragons. And based on your Draconic Blood ancestor selection, you get resistance to certain spells. So based on whichever one of these I pick, like if I picked I got my information for spells from a Bronze Dragon, I now have resistance against lightning damage. Warlock, you have your different kind of, basically your deities, versions of a deity. Fiend is more of your hellish demon kind of gods. The Great Old Ones are more of your ancient gods. And then there's also what's called the Fae, or Archfey, which are their own can of worms, if you will. But based on the specific subclass you pick, you get access to different kinds of spells. So for Fiend, you get a kind of a shield spell, and you get this Arms of Hadar, which is a very nice damaging spell. Great Old Ones, you get some more psychotic kind of processes, damages, but also you get this Hideous Laughter piece, which can basically take an enemy out of combat for a while. Archfey, you get a sleep spell, and then also Fairy Fire, which gives you advantage on attacks. The downside of this one is that it requires concentration to me, but that's just me. And then from a wizard, you don't get it until level 2, so I'll talk about it a little bit now, but there's basically a subclass of wizards for each type of magic. Evocation is more of your attack-based magic. There's a magic class for illusions, more defensive spells, combination of the two, utility spells, as I would call them, so like investigating things and whatnot. So there's just a lot you can kind of do with this. And that kind of ties back into now your background. So as you're going through and picking your race and your class, you're going to get access to these different kind of skills that you're proficient in, meaning that you get that bonus I talked about to it. So what I would recommend with this is, as you're going through this, don't pick a background that the skills overlap something you already have. So, or try not to anyway. So if I were to pick a wizard, I probably wouldn't pick Acolyte because, oh, actually I would, sorry, my bad. This is not nice. I thought it was going to show me other things. I'd try to pick something that I wouldn't have a proficiency bonus already. So as a Dragonborn, pick somebody else here. Sure, we'll take that one. More or less, long story short, is just trying to pick backgrounds that don't override things you already have. So, like for example, I'll pick a fighter just because I know a couple things about them. They get intimidation as part of their skill proficiencies. I wouldn't end up then picking anything that has that intimidation. So I probably wouldn't pick a soldier background because I already got intimidation from something else. But each of these different backgrounds not only tie into your skill proficiency abilities, but also how the world's going to portray you. So if you're a soldier, you'll probably end up getting, the classic BS about being a soldier. Or if you were an entertainer, somebody might recognize you from doing X, Y, and Z. It really can just tie into your character overall. It's very robust what you can do. And I've already kind of talked about abilities, but I'll kind of close off a little bit here with your different abilities and what they do. So your main abilities are Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. And when you're creating your character, the ranges for these go between 8 and 15 as their base score. Meaning that the highest I could set my Dexterity, for example, is 15. Before I could add anything else to it. These bonuses here tie in from my race and whatnot. So, like, because I am an elf, I get the +2 and the +1 because of that. And what they've kind of done in here, it's throwing me off because it's something new from, it's called Tasha's Guide to Everything. But they moved it around to where before, as a dwarf, as an elf, for example, you got a +2 to Charisma and a +1 to something else. So like it would automatically add the +2 to Charisma and let's say a +1 to Dexterity. You couldn't move it around. What they've done in the game, which is kind of a nice addition to that, is let's say I really wanted to play this elf, but the class I picked isn't really a charisma-based person. I'm a fighter. Like I don't care. I don't really need high charisma. Now you can go through and actually assign that to whatever skill or attribute you'd like, but you can't combine both of them into one. So like if I can't do +2 and +1 to the same skill, they have to be different things. You can clear this out and just kind of do your own thing with it, or you can use the game's recommended settings based on whatever class you are. So like the game's smart enough to realize, okay, you're a fighter, I probably want to have high strength, which is why it put all of my points into that. If I clear this out, and I'll just start fresh here, each of these abilities, you see I have 27 points. Each of these go up by 1 until I hit 10, or once I hit 13, everything's 1. Once I hit 14, in order to go to 14, it takes 2 points, and that goes until I hit 16. Or actually, no, I take that back. It just takes up to 2. Sorry, I'm used to when I play this game with a lot of folks is we have like a 30-point buy and let people go up to 17. But how these numbers roll is they basically range from 0 to 20 or even above 20. Probably not in this game because I think we max out at level 12. But what these bonuses tie into is that if your charisma score is between an 8 and a 9, you have a -1 to every skill and ability, whatever you want to call it, that ties to charisma. You have a -1 to it. If it's 10 to 11, you don't get any bonus. If it's 12 to 13, you get a 1. 14 to 15, it's a +2. 16 to 17 is a +3. 18 to 19 is a +4. 20 to 21 is a +5, and so on. Basically, every even numbered jump, it goes up by 1. So how these things kind of tie into as far as like your actual usage, so strength, like I kind of mentioned, that's really your muscle power and physical power. So the higher your strength is, the more damage you're probably going to do with big melee weapons. You're going to be more athletic, you're going to jump farther, and you can carry more. And also you get bonuses to your strength saving throw. So there's strength saving throw, an example of that would be, or what a saving throw I should say is that is the roll you do against the action an enemy took against you. For example, if an enemy is trying to push you down the road and you try to push back, you would have to do a strength saving throw against that, for example. So the higher your strength is, the higher chance you have of passing that saving throw. And that kind of thing kind of goes through with the rest of these. Whereas dexterity is more of how agile and acrobatic you can be, more of the finesse weapons, how good are you at using those, your initiative. And initiative is when you get into combat, you roll a dice, and the higher the number basically means the sooner in combat you're going to go. And then for your armor class, whatever your dexterity bonus is, that gets added to your armor based on the armor you have. So by that I mean if you have a dexterity of 15, that means I have a bonus of +2. And let's say I'm wearing medium armor, scale armor, for example. That's a type of medium armor you can get. And part of the scale armor attribute is that you can add up to 2 of your dexterity bonus to it. So its base armor class, let's say, is 14. And I can add 2 to it because my dexterity allows me, so now I have 16 AC. Basically meaning that when enemies attack me, they need to roll a 16 or higher in order to hit me. Think of that as higher AC means harder to hit. Constitution, that's really tied into your hit points or health. And also anything, I would say probably more poison based for saving throws. So let's say you got hit by a poison spray or a poison trap, and to try and not take damage, you roll your constitution check to hopefully pass all of that. Intelligence, just really how smart is your character in a way. Like, there's no better way I can word it. There are a lot of spells that have an intelligence saving throw, so having a higher intelligence means that maybe you're more resilient to being charmed or influenced by people. And then wisdom kind of ties in that same kind of concept as well. It's really your senses of like what's your vibe on this person or what's going on. And then a higher wisdom saving throw ability just means that you'll have a better chance to pass any spell that requires that kind of check. Higher charisma means that you're just more likable. It ties into intimidation, perception, persuasion, and deception. Um, it's always been weird to me that strength didn't tie into being intimidating, but hey, I didn't write the game. And then charisma saving throws, there's not really a lot of them, but if they come across in the game for whatever reason, you'd have the ability to have a higher roll. So for newer players, I'd almost recommend saying to use the recommended, and then if it has a star next to it, add your highest bonus to it, and then based on kind of what I mentioned here a little bit, so like with a fighter, I might want higher constitution, so I'll add that +1 here to kind of bump that up. Skills. So I've talked so much about this proficiency, I feel, and that's where these kind of bonuses are coming in at. So before I get into each of the skills, you would go through and say that because of whatever's going on here, I'm able to select any one of these boxes to mark that as a skill that I am proficient in. I can do this up to 2 times, it looks like. Bards are kind of special to where they have this ability called Jack of all trades at a higher level, to where it takes half your proficiency bonus and adds it to every skill. So you take that, your proficiency bonus at that time is roughly a +2, and for every skill here that doesn't have a box to it, like medicine for example, I'd be able to add a +1 to it, making it a +2 for my overall skill for this. So really, like what you pick here can be both beneficial and non-beneficial to you as well. It's really like, how do you want to play your character? Do you want to play a super athletic fighter? Probably want athletics. Do you want to be a very intimidating kind of paladin? Well, then you might pick intimidation if you were to go that route. How a lot of these skills kind of tie in. So like athletics, you can hover all of these and kind of get more information than what I'm about to give you. But quick overview really is athletics is just physical things. So running, jumping, tossing the dwarf over the bridge. Acrobatics is trying to keeping your balance. Let's say you're running over a rooftop and the game makes you do an acrobatics check. The higher this is, the better chance you are to keep your feet. Sleight of hand is really like being able to steal stuff, pickpockets, move things around in the area so that nobody notices. Stealth is your ability to kind of sneak through areas. Arcana is your just how well do you know magic, and history is how well do you know the history of the past and whatnot. Investigation is a pretty good primary skill that everyone should, in my opinion, have a little bit of usefulness on it, because a higher investigation just kind of means that as you're looking for things, so like as you're playing the game and you're trying to find a secret door or something, or a trap, the higher investigation skill you have, the better chance you have of finding things. Nature, just how well do you know plants and animals? Let's say you come across a berry bush, you'd be able to tell whether or not it's poison or not by doing some type of nature check probably. Religion is just that, how well do you know X religion. Animal handling, for handling animals, petting all the dogs, or if you're riding a horse and it's just your ability to like stay on the horse and, you know, do what you need to do with it. Insight is your ability to kind of read through people. Not everybody tells the truth, so having a high insight means you'll be able to see through it. Medicine, you'll be able to do just that, kind of be a more of a medic, if you will. You'll be able to tell that, you know, someone might need medical attention or a health potion for X, Y, and Z. Perception is just your perception of the area around you. Let's say you go into a room and a goblin's trying to hide under a table. The higher your perception is, the higher the chance is you'll see them. Survival is just your ability to kind of track things and just kind of navigating throughout the thing. So like, how well can you survive in the wilderness? Deception, how well are you at lying? Intimidation, more or less just throwing your weight around to get the information you need. Performance, how well can you act and do X, Y, and Z? As a bard, a high performance is probably helpful. Then persuasion is just your ability to persuade somebody to help you out or do what you're trying to do. Hopefully I know I kind of bounced around a lot of it, and I'll add timestamps to this once the video's live, but hopefully this gives you a good dive in of the origins, the different kind of races, sub-races, a little touch over spells, the different kind of classes, the backgrounds, and then what these abilities are. The other last thing here that I'll kind of go over with character creation is there are so many things that you can change in this game. You can change your body type, so you can be a male, female, or binary neutral, trans. Like you can, it's wide open really. They don't discriminate, which is an interesting twist that a lot of game developers don't offer. So you can change your identity, like I mentioned, as non-binary, male, female. You can change your voice.
Where to next?
You can get a chance to hear what that
Let's
voice
hope the
is.
locals are
Hells. Something just woke up down
a lot of your presets here for your faces, your skin tones. I mean, I could be purple if I wanted to. You can just do a lot of different things, and then you can also change like scarring. Are you older? Are you younger? Just your freckle intensity. There's a lot of different things. Apparently you can change the size of your junk. That's entertaining. I imagine that it's probably the same way. Yeah, that's it. Okay, that's cool. I'm not diving into that one. I'll let you guys figure that one out on your own. I imagine it's very similar to Cyberpunk, to where you can have whatever you want, and probably whatever size you want, or you can randomize. And I actually like the randomizer myself, and then I'll go through and kind of go from there. But you can change like your tattoos, your eye makeup, or your eye color and everything, your makeup, your hair. Apparently you can add piercings. You used to be able to kind of get into the default of like what your like bone structure was, right? So you could have like in Skyrim, wider cheekbones or a bigger head, smaller head. So there's just a lot of different items. Okay, wrong button. My bad. But there's just a lot of different things that you can do with this, which makes it very, very entertaining. I'm just going to grab this preset here. Go here for now. After you've gone through and created your character, you can go through and give them a name and get a nice little overview of your specific pieces here. So this is telling me that because I have a 13, that's a +1 to my dexterity. So I get a +1 to my initiative rolls. And then because my constitution is a +2, everyone starts with 10 HP plus their constitution modifier. So if I had this at a higher number, I could get 13 HP to kind of start. You can give yourself a name. And then afterwards, this is... Throughout the game, there's a specific character that you see throughout a lot of things. This is kind of how it was in the early access portion. So basically, whoever you create here is who you see in your dreams and all that fun stuff. I'm going to keep posting kind of things like this. I'm just kind of trial running, see what people like or don't like of what I'm kind of trying to do here of giving just there's a lot of things going on in this game and it's a lot to comprehend, and I'm not gonna lie, playing D&D I feel gives me a pretty decent advantage, gives you a decent advantage over a non-D&D player, just because of the world that this is in. And me personally, I've been doing D&D stuff for like 6-7 years now, and yeah, a lot of people call it nerdy, but me, quite honestly, like doing this, being as a kind of creative person as I am, it's a lot of fun, and you get to spend time with your friends. You can do whatever. Like honestly, you have a crappy day at work or just crappy day in general, and you know that you get to go in and you can play Thonak, the 7-foot barbarian that grabs a chair and beats a mofo with a frickin' chair, or beats a thief with his own friend. Just something, I don't know, brings you joy. Like that's what games do. They bring us joy, in my opinion. And I feel like I'm going on a soapbox. I'm gonna try my best to step off of that. But long story short, I'll be posting some more videos here about just some guides of just like the gameplay itself, how combat works, a couple playthrough, like I'll have playthrough videos as I actually start playing through this myself. And there's I do have plans of through the tutorial area. There's actually a very very good sword you can get early on. Is you just have to fight a couple things to get it, but if you do certain things throughout the tutorial, you can actually exit it being already leveled up to level 2 and have this badass sword that does three 6-sided dice worth of damage plus some bonuses. So you have a sword that could do anywhere between, let's say, 5 and 16 damage, and you're level 2. Like, you're set. You're set. Like, most things that you're going to fight at that level aren't going to have a lot of health, so you're going to be able to one-shot a lot of things. So yeah, I hope everyone kind of enjoyed that, and yeah, if you like what you saw, feel free to give me a like, subscribe, or didn't like it, feel free to say something in the comments. I mean, like I don't know, I'm going out of my comfort zone here and trying to do what I can to just help people enjoy this game. So yeah, I appreciate you all, and until we meet again.